right.
Excellent.
Good, darlings. And I'll put it to gallery because I want to see all of you. Okay, doke. Happy to be here again. I hope we're still all alive. I mean, some of us might not be, and that's the way it is, but let's hope we all are, so we can finish our course before we die. Okay, so put our little prayers up there. Talia.
I'm on it.
Okay, and where's Nina? She's there?
Yes.
You know, Jeff.
Good.
Yeah.
Nina's Arumze, leading our mandala and our. So we're thinking again, every time just think, Nina on behalf of Laksam is offering a mandala to the Buddha as a request for the teachings. And we use our creative imagination. Don't, think small, don't think small. Lama Yeshe would always say, think big, because remember, every thought you have counts. Every thought you have sows a seed. So make the thoughts the most big as possible. So imagine the whole universe, all the marvelous things in the universe, piling them all up into this marvelous pile of goods, offering to the Buddha as a request for the teachings. Go, okay, wonderful.
So let's go ahead together. Saji puki jokshin metog tramri rablingji ni degyen padi sangye jindu mikte ulwa idrokunamdag jingla chupashok. Perfect, pure, holy gurus from the billowing clouds of wisdom and compassion in the sky of the Dharmakaya, please let fall a rain of profound and extensive Dharma upon the receptacle of those to be subdued exactly as they need. Idam Guru Ratna Mandala Kam Niryatayami.
Okay, so I have a little prayer reminding us of our reliance on the Buddha and his teachings and this motivation. We're getting into the compassion wing very soon, I think maybe even today. So we'll discuss this. It's a crucial thing to understand. That, and we already begun this in when we discuss karma, but here in the Bodhisattva path, it's really crucial. That what determines the character of the action we do, karma, is not even so much the action as the motivation that impels the action, that is beneath the action, that drives the action. So here, the motivation that's driving this action we're all doing together of listening to the teachings is bodhichitta. You can't get something broader. You can't get something more expansive than that. So that means the words, as it says, the first one will say it in English, and until we're enlightened, we are relying upon the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha, now the motivation. So by the virtuous karma of listening to these teachings, may we become a Buddha so we can benefit all sentient beings. That the second two lines, that's the motivation. Sangye charang soke chognam la jancho baru dagni kyap suchi dagi chanyen gipe sonam ki drola penche sangye drupha shog sangye charang soke chognam la jancho baru dagni kyap suchi dagi chanyen gipe sonam ki drola penche sangye drupha shog. Okay. Okay, so far we have been on this path to enlightenment, this Lam Rim, this gradual path, this packaging of Buddha's teachings that's particularly unique to the way the Tibetans have put it together, specifically Tsongkhapa, our lineage Lama in the 14th century, based upon the teachings of the great Indian yogi scholar who came to Tibet and spent the last 15, 20 years or something of his life there in the 11th century, 1100s, 12th century, something, 10th, whatever, Atisha. And it's what Atisha did was take all the main points from this vast body of knowledge, this vast body of metaphysics, psychology, epistemology, philosophy, practice, you name it, and took the essential points from this vast body of knowledge and presented them in an orderly way and orderly according to experience. In other words, exactly how you'd study any body of knowledge. Someone doesn't just throw you a whole pile of books about music and you have to struggle your way through it. They present you a course of music, the simple stuff first, middle stuff, and then advanced stuff. It's so obvious and so logical, we don't even question it. But the second it comes to a spiritual path, we don't think that way. And that's really confusing for us. But that's exactly what this is, So, you know, we've got the different levels of these divided into these 3 scopes of practice. That's how they refer to it. According to the scope, the capacity of the disciple. So the first one is actually, as Rinpoche, I always repeat, as Rinpoche politely, you know, respecting the lineage, would say that the first part of the teachings are those practices and teachings suitable to the disciple of the least capability. This is the lowest scope, sometimes I refer to it. Then you got and I like to call it junior school, just as my cliched analogy, you know, but it's a good one. Then you got the more advanced middle scope, the teachings and practices suitable to the disciple of the middle capability. Now that's the wisdom wing. In this novel analogy I repeatedly use, wisdom wing and compassion wing. A bird needs 2 wings. But this also is all the Theravadan teachings, the Hinayana teachings. If you were in Burma or Thailand, this is what you'd get. Junior school, high school, and then you'd graduate. You'd realize emptiness and get the hell out of here, achieve your own nirvana. But here we've got the compassion wing as well. And that's the great scope, the Mahayana component, bodhichitta, the view that on the basis of this extraordinary level of compassion called great compassion, mahakaruna. We're going to get into this today. You know, you continue moving on the path. You can be out of samsara by now. You can graduate at high school, but you don't. But if you've got bodhicitta as your motivation, which is based on great compassion, which is the attitude of not only is there suffering, oh my God, look at the suffering, but what can I do to fix it? It's this brave attitude of the bodhisattvas. Then even if you're qualified not to come back into samsara, you will happily come back because you want to continue to become a Buddha, because you have this enormous compassion for sentient beings and this sense of responsibility, like a mother for her child. You know, if I don't take care, who will? Junior school, high school, university. And then you've got, of course, the postgraduate level, which, you know, fits very nicely. And that's Tantra, Vajrayana. All the components, all the stages of these Buddhist teachings in a nice, orderly way. So we've talked about junior school, which is the essence of, you know, the lower scope and middle scope. Junior school and high school, the wisdom wing, all the teachings about karma first and then the mind, dealing with controlling your body, speech, and mind, the practices of refraining from harming. All of this is indicated by Buddha behind us, you know, this statue. Totally subdued body, speech, and mind. And this is when you'd have renunciation of suffering and its causes. You would understand what karma is, you understand the causes of suffering, what suffering is, and you want to get the hell out of suffering. You're sick of it, the 3 levels of suffering. And then you know, if you, like I said, if you graduated there, you'd realize that you'd add an emptiness to it. You'd realize emptiness and you'd achieve your own nirvana in one life or other, and you'd get the hell out of samsara and you will not come back. So we've gone through that. We finished that last week, pretty much finished, the summary of it. So the first scope, junior school, is all about controlling your body and speech, not even about the mind yet, really. Calm your body and speech down. Why? Because whatever you think and do and say leaves seeds in your mind that produces the person you become, because we're the boss. We're our own creator, basically. That's the essence of the karmic view. The instructions are the same as your grandma or Jesus. Don't kill, don't steal, don't lie. But the reason is very different. As we've discussed, in Buddhist terms, what defines the heaviest of negative actions is an action that harms another. But that's not the reason that he exhorts us not to do them. The reason here at this level is because, guess what, honey? What you do, think, and say will harm you and will cause you happiness. So you better control your body and speech. Now you get to high school, where you now start to look at the mind, which is the cause of all the problems. In the beginning, you work on the servants of the mind, body and speech. And you stop killing, stop stealing, stop lying, stop jumping on the wrong partner. And then eventually from this, you can deduce that, you know, that also implies don't eat too many bits of cake and, you know, control your body altogether. Don't just follow attachments, cravings. And then the next level, you get to start to become, you really unpack and unravel your mind. This is in the second scope, high school. You really start to be a Buddhist here. And this is where you start to learn your mind intimately. It's how we discussed last week and the week before. In particular, we understand the delusions that drive all the crazy actions of our body and speech, are the source of our suffering. And in particular here, the main one of the 3 poisons, which are the 3 main ones of the 84,000 the Buddha talks about, the 3 poisons: attachment, ignorance, attachment, and aversion. So the one we really need to understand is attachment. And then we understand aversion, which is a response when attachment doesn't get what it wants. These have this intimate relationship. If you talk about attachment and anger in our culture, we just think they're sort of fairly silly words. We don't even talk about anger as a problem, you know, not a psychological problem. We just call it kind of natural. Well, we're talking psychology here for the Buddha. Totally just psychology. So we're driven by this, you know, the primordial delusion is the misconception of a neurotic self, and a separate, miserable, concrete, set in stone self, ignorance. We'll get to that later. Then on the basis of this, there's this, one of its main voices. Its main voice is attachment, this bottomless pit, this emotional hunger to get what that supposed I wants every second, which is an impossibility. It's a misconception. So beginning to unpack and unravel this attachment that drives everything we think and do and say, including it's even including in our good stuff, in all our virtues, in kindness and love and compassion. It kind of pollutes them. And then when it doesn't get what it wants, we have a panic attack, and that's called aversion. The volatile level is anger. The more subtle middle level is kind of an irritation, annoyance, frustration, upset. We have that all day. And then the really internalized depression, despair, you know. We just live in these. This is just the fundamentals. So begin to unpack and unravel our mind and understand these will drive us every second. This is pretty profound. That's being a Buddhist. This is seriously being a Buddhist. Because your mind's not set in stone. You can change it. You know, we can mold our mind into any shape we like, Lama Tsongkhapa says. So now we can go to the compassion wing. Like I said, if we graduated here, we'd bring emptiness into the mix. We'd get single point of concentration, shamatha, and then we'd develop insight into emptiness, and then eventually we'd cut the root of all our suffering. And one life or other in which you accomplish that, you will have achieved your nirvana, your cessation of suffering and its causes. And then at the end of that life, you won't come back because you finished the job. You're out of here, baby. But here we're on the compassion wing, which is I can't leave others behind. So, okay, the compassion wing, we continue to work on our mind. That doesn't change. And we even continue, there's different levels of ethics, morality. The whole path is a practice of morality. The whole path is underpinned by being a practice of good ethics, morality. Very clear. Buddha's super clear, and we understand that back in karma. Very clearly the way Buddha presents this law of ethics, you know. So the level of ethics is one level of ethics or morality, which is the first scope and second scope. And in the next stages here, when we even live in the bodhisattva vows, in the bodhisattva path, where we're trying to accomplish bodhichitta, all of this is the morality of refraining from harming. The morality or the ethics of refraining from harming. And even the bodhisattva level, though the emphasis in the bodhisattva level is different. Up until now, the main thing that's driven our wish not to kill, steal, lie, badmouth, follow, attachment, anger, jealousy, depression, the main wish is to refrain from those. It's because I am sick of suffering. And we need to cultivate that. We need to be revolted by suffering. That's renunciation. But here, we continue working on our mind. That never changes all the way to Buddhahood. But the emphasis begins to shift now as we move into the compassion wing. We continue to work on our mind, lessen our delusions. But here now, the emphasis is on breaking down the barriers that these delusions have created between self and other. And we're trying to move towards now wanting to benefit others. We're still here dealing with the morality of restraint, the morality or the ethics of refraining from harming. But it's now encompassing others as well, you know. In the first and second scopes, the main reason to stop killing, stealing, lying, follow, attachment, anger, jealousy is because you're sick of suffering, baby. But as Lama Tsongkhapa says, other sentient beings will get the benefit. The rats and cockroaches will have a party because you leave them in peace, you know. But here now the emphasis is continue to work on your mind, lessen the delusions, but the emphasis shifts. It's to break down the barriers between self and other, because we're aiming in this next stage of practice to get bodhichitta, this outrageous, I mean, over the top, outrageous attitude driven by incredible levels of love and compassion that cause you to, one, only want to benefit whoever is in front of you. That just becomes an utterly spontaneous thing when you've achieved bodhicitta. And two, the long-term never giving up. Life after life after life, coming back and back and back and back and back, bopping along, you know, connecting with sentient beings and accumulating the appropriate amount of wisdom and compassion that will eventually culminate in Buddhahood. And that's the final stages of the bodhisattva path when you practice the six perfections, which we'll get to once we've achieved bodhicitta. And it's there where we now start to practice the powerful levels of morality, of the morality of benefiting others. Because you can't really begin to benefit others until you can stop harming them, you know. This is a really crucial thing to understand. Okay, so we move on to the compassion wing now. We've really got a strong sense so far in the first and second scopes, junior school, high school. We've got a strong sense of what suffering is, the 3 levels of it, and a wish to get the hell out of suffering. We are fed up to our teeth with suffering. We are up to here with suffering. You've got to be revolted by suffering, and I swear to you, this is unbelievably difficult. And also we feel guilty about that. We think that sounds selfish. You are totally mistaken to think that. It's intelligent. How in the name of heaven can you possibly help other people with nutrition to how to help their body become healthy if you haven't become intimately familiar with nutrition until you have given up all the garbage dumps food that causes you so much suffering? If you haven't got that for yourself, you're not qualified to help others yet. Same here. We're talking mental nutrition. So once we've understood what suffering is, first noble truth, 3 kinds, suffering of change, all pervasive suffering, and we are revolted by it. In particular, so far, we're mainly dealing with the first 2. By practicing junior school, you're trying to get rid of the suffering of suffering. By practicing high school, you're getting rid of the suffering of change. And we're moving towards getting rid of the all pervasive suffering when we finally get to the 6 perfections and the last perfection of all, where we realize emptiness and cut the root of all suffering. But here we're adding now compassion to the mix. Because we look around, the more you work on, so start at the beginning, when we're all full of misery and neurotic and depressed and angry and jealous and unhappy and attachment and despair and think the world is horrible and I know I didn't ask to get born, it's not my fault and why am I suffering and I don't know, it's my boyfriend's fault, it's mummy's fault, it's daddy's fault, it's the Catholic Church's fault, it's everybody else, we have no idea, we just feel like this innocent victim who's been plonked on this planet and has no say in anything. We feel hopeless and despairing. That's the starting point. That's ego. Now we start to hear Buddha's view. We start to get some courage and realize, guess what, folks? I'm in charge of this. What a revelation. I brought my own rubbish into this life, and I've also brought my own goodness, and it's up to me to start working on myself. So we start controlling our body and speech. Then we start to control our mind. And now as we do this, we become more content, how would you be, to speak practically, how would you be if you had even a semblance of renunciation? What you're renouncing, what you're giving up is suffering and its causes. And this is already a problem. You know, we so confuse this. It sounds depressing to us to have renunciation. As Lama Tsongkhapa said, when we hear the Buddha says we've got to give up attachment, we go, oh, I've got to give up my heart. I've got to give up my happiness, because we don't hear it properly. You know, so we become all depressed. Such a wrong view. How would you be if you even had some attachment, some renunciation? I'll tell you how you'll be. You'll be blissful. You'll be radiant. You'll be joyful. You'll be in charge of your body, speech, and mind. You'll be stable. You'll be content. You'll be fulfilled. You'll be less neurotic, less attached, less angry, less jealous, less depressed, more in charge of yourself, more joyful, more confident. That's exactly literally the consequences of getting some renunciation, not being some kind of depressed, bored person. Oh, I'm renounced, you know. Rubbish. We so misunderstand. And so the other thing is, the more when you remove from your mind your own nonsense, when you realize your own suffering, you suddenly, you know, when you didn't know before, let's say you just use the analogy again of physical health. There you are running around totally physically unhealthy, completely overweight, completely eating all the wrong junk, having pains in your knees and bad things happening and getting headaches. And you've got absolutely no idea. You've never heard of nutrition in your whole life. It's a revelation to you. And you go to somebody and they start telling you about nutrition. Well, it's hard work giving it up, isn't it? It's hard work giving up that suffering and those causes. It feels like even worse suffering in the beginning. But when you start to get healthy and it's a revelation to you. And then guess what happens now? You start to look around, go, oh my God, everybody's in the same boat. Look at them. They're all overweight. They're all eating wrong food. They're all a load of rubbish. You can't see it until you first see it for yourself. It is sort of obvious, you know. Same here. Same here. When you start to get renunciation, you can't believe, you look in the world, everywhere you go, you see these nakedly, you see the suffering and its causes. You see the suffering everywhere. People not realizing they're the cause of their own suffering, blaming everybody else, going crazy. And of course, you can't help but have compassion. This comes naturally. But now we consciously start to cultivate it. So we go to the compassion wing. So what do? Well, the next goal is to achieve bodhichitta. It was amazing. Like I said, this, you know, it's not compassion itself. It's not the equivalent of compassion. It's the result of compassion. And it's got 2 components, like I mentioned. This outrageous attitude. I mean, bodhicitta, most of the words you can translate. For some reason, I don't know. When you translate bodhicitta into enlightened attitude, it's kind of boring. I don't know. It doesn't grab me, you know. Or enlightened thought. It sounds even more boring. awakening thought. I don't know, you just got to get used to bodhicitta, I think. It's got a powerful feeling, once you start getting used to it. So what it is when you've got it, it's the culmination of this next stages of practice. And it's this, I mean, if you look at the qualities of a person who's got it, it's like science fiction, or it's like a saint. And if we think of a saint, like when I was a Catholic, I'd love to read all the saints. I'd love to read their stories, got so inspired. But you tend to have a feeling that, well, God made some people like saints, and that's just the way it is. They're saints, aren't they lucky? They're saints. But you don't go to a course to become a saint. We don't tend to think of it like that. You kind of hope to be like them. But they're sort of made that way, Well, no, Buddha says we can all become saints. It's our nature. It's our potential, naturally. We've all got the potential to rid the mind of delusions and to develop this amazing attitude called bodhicitta. So when you read the qualities of a bodhisattva, then it is like science fiction. It's impossible. For example, one of the qualities of a bodhisattva, once you've accomplished this bodhicitta, and this, by the way, this is a big point. Okay, when we talk about compassion meditations and bodhicitta, we think of it as kind of a momentary feeling that comes and goes. That's nonsense. It's like sitting at the piano one day, you don't know any theory, but you've got a feeling for the piano and you play a really nice piece, a very pleasant tune. And then someone says, oh, that's lovely, Robina, play it again. Oh, no, it just sort of happened. That's how we think about meditation. You close your eyes and something special happens. You're in tears of compassion for sentient beings. Oh, I had a moment of bodhicitta. What good is that? You've got to have it so it's come every time. You've got to learn musical theory so perfectly that every time you go to the piano, you play it. That's the whole point. You perfect it. That's the point that Buddha's making. It's not a hit and miss. So here, what we're trying to do, what bodhicitta, if you had bodhicitta, for example, one quality would be there'd be no longer the thought of I. I mean, you're I. You're not Fred or Joan. You don't make a mistake. You're not silly. But there's no longer that usual central player in our head called I that's usually rather pained, it gets hurt easily and is upset and is always needy and no one loves this I and I wish I could do this and I am not good enough. We know this tortured feeling around the word I. That does not exist. But even more crucially, the I that's separate from other, that's not fully developed yet. For the bodhisattva, they've totally made this paradigm shift in their mind. This is the first moment of bodhicitta, where there's no longer the thought of I. Therefore, there's no longer the thought of I getting something. It would never occur to you to think of wanting something. This sounds insane, right? This sounds like mental illness. That doesn't sound normal for us. Because our sense of normal in our culture is a person who's deluded. That's what's normal for us in our culture. So this is quite shocking when to think about it. There's only the thought of others. So you're driven by these two things when you've got bodhicitta. One, only the thought to help who's ever in front of you. The pedophile, the ant, the dog, the monkey, the snake, whatever. It's just naturally your job. It's like you're a mother and they're your child. The mother could be sitting on the beach and her child could be drowning. She'll have incredible compassion. Oh my God, look at that suffering. But she's not going to looking around wondering who's going to save her baby, whether she can swim or not. Who cares? She's in the water. It's her job. That's what great compassion is, and that leads to bodhicitta. The characteristic of a bodhisattva is this great compassion. It's my job. So you see the rat, the dog, the ant, automatically they're your beloved, and your job is to help. That's what drives the bodhisattvas. Other. You could argue that they've completed their development of not completed yet, but they're full themselves, they're satisfied, they're joyful, they're blissful. Don't just think they're being this sacrificing themselves for others. It sounds so pathetic and woeful. No, they're full of joy and clarity and fulfillment because they've got renunciation. They understand themselves. So they're not sacrificing this poor me who's got to rush out and be a victim and help others. That's how we hear it. We can't hear it any other way. But if a bodhisattva, I mean, even when you see examples, examples I know in my life, Lama Tsongkhapa, for example, when he had his stroke in 2011, I mean, he would never say he's a bodhisattva. They never do. Dalai Lama would never say. But you listen to other people talk and you watch their behavior and you think, well, they've got to be. They tick all the boxes. Lama Tsongkhapa, when he had his stroke, normally when people have a stroke, they're freaking out, they're miserable, they're frantic, they're depressed, they're angry, they're hurt. He was joyful, he was laughing, it was like ridiculous, The hospital he went to, I remember I was there in Australia, and then Roger filmed him already, a little message from Lama Tsongkhapa when he got to the hospital, the night of his stroke, or the next morning. Well, he sounded like a drunken, senile old man because he couldn't speak properly, but he's laughing the whole time. These Catholic nuns in this hospital could not believe this crazy monk. He just laughed and was joyful the whole time with a stroke, you know, and his monks all helping him, hanging around, all happy and funny. They couldn't understand it. And they say with these bodhisattvas, and I mean, I just don't understand, it sounds so weird. The more suffering they have, the happier they get. I mean, it sounds demented, doesn't it? It's just too much. So we've got to understand this properly, not romanticize it. And it's all to do with developing your mind. So the goal of this next phase is bodhicitta. As we all know in the Lam Rim, there are two main methods. One is called the 6 causes and 1 effect, or the 7-point training or something. And the other one is a more radical one. And this is the favorite of all the Tibetans, all of our lamas, exchanging self for others, you know. We call it different things. They call it different things, but which is eventually what bodhicitta is anyway, but it's another more radical method. Maybe they call it lojong, mind training. The whole path is mind training. So there's a particular method, a series of 11 techniques, which I like, and it's in the Pabongka Rinpoche's Lam Rim, and it's a combination of these two. So the goal, again, we're going to this next phase of our inner development is to achieve bodhicitta. And then the next stage after that, having achieved bodhicitta, the next one is you perfect the 6 perfections of the bodhisattva. And that's where you start to do the morality of benefiting others. So, okay, the very first of these 11 is hugely important to understand. It's called equanimity. Our trouble again too with us, with all these different terms in spiritual, you know, in Buddhist philosophy, especially when it comes to love and compassion, we're very wishy-washy in our definitions. We don't even have definitions. We don't even know what we're talking about. Every one of you would give you, if you'd heard of equanimity before, you'd give your definition. There'd be as many people as there are in the Zoom session today, there'd be as many definitions. So we've got to be very precise and clear. And these meditations on how to cultivate equanimity, and as we go through those stages, they're all very clear meditations where you have to have some focus, the first mode of meditation, and then you go to the second mode where you want to get insight into these different stages of development. So they're very precise. But the essence of all these techniques is and they're all using what the Tibetans would call analytical meditation, and that's just a fancy term for the verb to think about something. So when we know you're studying your violin music, you're studying your cooking class, you've come home, you're doing your homework, you know perfectly well that that's what you have to do. Learning those recipes includes thinking them through logically, not just sitting there spacing out, hoping the vision of the recipe will come to you. You use your noggin, you use your intelligence, and you think it through, the logic of why this and the teaspoon of that and a gram of this, and that's the function of the chocolate, and then it becomes more real for you. You get an experience of the recipe. That's called homework. That's called meditation. That's called the second mode of meditation, and the method you use is thinking, and the insight is what is triggered. I get it, you know, at the end of that process. So this is precise and accurate. All these words. So the equanimity is a precise state of mind. It gives rise to the next one, which is this, and then that, and then there's love and compassion, great compassion. They've all got their definitions. We've got to be precise about what they are. Okay, so what's equanimity? Excuse me for a second. Okay, so equanimity, well, this word is used in different stages of our development as Buddhists. In the first level of practice, junior school and high school, you definitely say that one of the characteristics you'd accomplish as you progress, controlling your body, your speech, and your mind, would be a level of equanimity. But there, it's referring to your own state of mind where there's more stability, not up and down like a yo-yo, you know, more equanimity within yourself. Between the extremes, you know, more balanced, more stable emotionally. I mean, how marvelous. We all want that. Now, this equanimity is different. It's in relation to other sentient beings. So very specifically, this equanimity here, such as when you've got it, when you've accomplished it. So by doing the contemplations we're going to be talking about, the goal will be to accomplish this equanimity. What it is a heartfelt recognition that friend, enemy, and stranger, and you will find there's no fourth category in this universe. Friend, enemy, and stranger, this is equanimity, a heartfelt recognition that the friend, the enemy, and the stranger are equal to each other from one point of view. Not generally equal. No, some are more beautiful, some are ugly, some are tall, some are thin, some are psychopaths, some are saints. No, not in relation to that. They're equal from one really fundamental point of view. Their wish to be happy and the wish not to suffer. That's it. That's it. That's it. So that's what we're trying to accomplish. First step. And this is the basis, the actual foundation upon which you can then stably build the other points until eventually you get bodhicitta. Why is it the basis? It's very clear. So, okay, right now, okay, so these three categories, friend, enemy, stranger, we're still talking Buddhist psychology here. It's obvious, isn't it? When we looked back earlier in the high school, we looked at the three poisons, the three toxic emotions. Ego grasping, a colloquial term for ignorance, the root delusion, when it clings to the self. And then attachment, to get what that self wants. And then anger, and a panic attack of anger or aversion when it doesn't get what it wants. These are the three poisons, the three toxic emotions. So in the first level of practice in high school, we're learning to subdue those in relation to everything, in relation to cakes and all kinds of things. But here, we're specifically working on these in relation to sentient beings. So these, the way they function in relation to sentient beings is literally create these three categories. A person who is a friend is by definition an object of my attachment. Look at it. I mean, there's a very loose use of the words here, friend. Then you've got enemy, and we mightn't use that word, but it's a useful word here in the sense that that's the object of your aversion. So who is by definition the object of your aversion? A person who stopped doing or doesn't do what your attachment wants, basically. You know, when the husband chucks you out for a younger version, you put him from the friend category into the enemy category. It's obvious. He stopped fulfilling your attachment's needs. It's really evident, you know. Then you've got the third category, which is called stranger. And that's the object of one function of ignorance. Ignorance is the name of the root delusion, the clinging to things as having an inherent characteristic, an inherent nature. And we're going to get to that when we get to emptiness at the end of the six perfections. But here we can see in the earlier stages, for example, in the first Buddhist teachings in junior school, the very first level of practice in Buddhism, before you even commit to being a Buddhist, Buddha's recommending 10 little practices, 10 little don'ts. The first 3 are don'ts of the body. Don't kill, don't steal, don't jump on the wrong partner. The next 4 are don'ts of the speech. Don't lie, don't badmouth. You know, don't use harsh language, don't badmouth behind backs, and don't rabbit on about nothing. Then 3 of the mind. He gets us to start to work on the grosser level, a heaviest level of the 3 poisons. So he gets us to try and harness the berserk, endless, bottomless pit of emotional hunger and craving, which is the gross level of, say, attachment, you know. Uncontrolled craving, so much distress. The heavy levels of anger, ill will or malice, where you just can't give up the anger and you actually you want people to suffer. That's a heavy level of anger. And then he gets us also to work on the heaviest level of ignorance, which in that level back then in junior school is this kind of fundamentalism. Very narrow-minded, very ignorant, stupid, wrong view, narrow-minded. I'm right and you're wrong. Very fixed. There's no space at all. That's a gross level, like racism, like sexism, like, you know, fanatic, fundamentalist type of mind. We've all got that. We can see it in politics and everything, but we can see it in our own mind. I'm right, you're wrong. That's it. Narrow-minded. That's a function. That's a particular aspect of ignorance. Now here, an aspect of ignorance in the compassion wing, in terms of enemy, friend, and stranger, the function of ignorance here, the object of your ignorance, is an object of indifference. It gives rise to indifference, uncaring, not caring, couldn't care, and that's the object of the object of that is the stranger. So why? Because the friend is a person who does what fulfills your needs, so that they do what your attachment wants. So and then the enemy is the person who consciously or not consciously, but doesn't do what your attachment wants. So you can't stand them. And the third category, guess what? A stranger is by definition a person who neither harms you nor helps you. So how do we feel about them? We could not care less. They could drop dead and we will not, it won't matter. And that's 99.999% of the universe. Think about this. So every sentient being has their own group of friends, enemies, and strangers. That's the universe, and we never, ever question it. So it's very shocking here that Buddha's going to this deeper level and saying these are made up nonsense. We've fabricated these three categories of sentient beings. So obviously then, given that we divide the world into these three, what we're trying to do in this path is develop love and compassion. This is the essence of all the virtues is love and compassion, okay? Love is, may you be happy. You delight when you see someone happy. That's love. Compassion, may you not suffer. And you empathize when you see the suffering. That's love and compassion, bare bones. So we have that right now, no question. We have those virtues. But who for? Only the first lot. You occasionally might read the newspaper or your iPad and you'll have a moment of compassion for some strangers. You will, but they won't last long. You go back to your family again, back to your beloveds. That occupies our mind. So here we do have love and compassion, but only for that category, mostly only for the beloveds. And we don't question that. We think that's perfectly normal. Of course, I love my poodle more than anything. Of course, I love my baby, my grandchildren, my wife, my husband, my family. The world is divided into that, That's attachment. So because attachment makes them look more beautiful, you've got a karmic connection with them too, a very strong karmic connection. You can't stop that. And because of past virtuous karma, they are kind to you, they are good to you, but they loom very large in your mind because that's all you think about, because they're your beloveds, your friends, your children, your grandchildren. They appear gorgeous to you. Attachment makes them look more gorgeous than they really are. So of course you have love and compassion. You have bucket loads of love and compassion, but only for them, and only for them until they stop fulfilling your needs. So mostly mothers will never give up wanting their children to be happy, even if the children are horrible to them. But most people will definitely give up love for the ex-husband and the people and the people who give, are mean to them at work and everything. It won't last long, So we've got friends and enemies, and we keep changing roles. We can see that. So we do have love and compassion, but as we would say in English, it's got strings attached, or it's basically, as Lama Zopa says, it's unstable because it's contingent upon attachment. It's polluted by attachment. So it's this, and it sounds very kind of, when we hear that we're like this, it sounds we're sort of embarrassed that, we only have love and compassion for those who do what I want. But it's true. It's a fact. Look at the world. I mean, look at the world, But we just take it for granted. We think it's normal behavior. And it is normal behavior. But Buddha says we can go beyond it because it's limited. It's ego functioning. So it's quite shocking, this. We're learning how to be a saint, basically. And Buddha says we all can, So friend is then the label we're using for objects of attachment, for whom we do have love and compassion, depending on how much we have. Enemy, by definition, is a person who doesn't fulfill my needs in whatever way. Maybe they've got the wrong color skin, or they listen to the wrong music, or it could be any stupid reason. Ego is ridiculous, and the reason it makes up. They don't even have to consciously dislike you. They're the wrong politics, the wrong race, the wrong football team, whatever it is, because it doesn't agree with you. So the aversion in your mind paints an ugly picture of them. They're horrible, yuck, over there, go away. So of course we don't love them. And if especially if it's the ex-husband or somebody who's really harmed you, not only do you not want them to be happy, but you have to struggle to not want them to not suffer. To not want them to suffer. You've got to struggle for that one. The third lot, they just don't enter into our field of, they don't enter into our lives. A bunch of people out there, 99% of the universe. We know they exist because we read our news and see our television and read our iPads all day. We can't help it these days. And we know there's millions of people out there. But just naturally, they're very distant for us. We can't see them. We don't remember the names of those countries. We can't see them properly. We read about their experiences. It touches our heart a little bit, but not that much, because they're not our beloveds, you know. I mean, this is such an example. I always quote this example. Reading my New York Times one day, and in the corner, I saw the heading on my iPad, a ferry accident in Tasmania. 350 people die in a ferry accident in Tasmania. Well, I'm Australian born, okay? I'm also English and American, but never mind. I still feel like an Australian. So that's my people, Tasmania. So I ran. I said, oh, no. I looked at the story, about to read it. Oh, no, I said, because I was visualizing Tasmania. It's a little island just off Melbourne, and you've got to get a ferry to go between the two. So I was visualizing all these people, you know, Australians dying in a ferry accident. Then I looked at the heading and it said Tanzania. And I sort of said to myself, oh, that's okay. I mean, not really, but do you understand my point? Tanzania is a stranger. So I caught my mind. Of course I did. And I read the story and tried to have compassion. Tanzania, where's that? You know, strangers, isn't it? We're all like that, naturally, because we have the 3 poisons. So what we're trying to do here is really outrageous. This is the first of the 11. Is get super clear. We're going to make a radical shift, because what we're trying to do is get love and compassion for everybody. So you check those words, please. And you go, you mean I've got to have love and compassion for the pedophile? You mean I've got to have love and compassion for the maniac politicians? You mean I've got to have love and compassion for the people who've harmed me? Excuse me, mate, give me a break. Well, yes, the answer is. But why is it so hard for us? Is because our love and compassion now, like I said before, are contingent on whether the people make me happy. So if we can look at the logic, shift the illogic of these delusions and see how limited they are, and start to realize, this is why it's so powerful, equanimity. You're basically getting you're getting yourself out of the equation. You're stepping back. And even as we're talking now, I'm just going to be giving casual words as arguments, okay, which is what we do is more formally in meditation. But just right as we're talking, have to the left in front of you a beloved, a current person whom you adore. Maybe nobody has anyone, who knows, but maybe we've got some people who do what our attachment wants and whom we adore. Put their face to the left in front of you. Right in front of you, eyeball to eyeball, have a person you can't stand, your ex-husband, whoever it is, you know. If you're brave enough, if they've really harmed you, maybe it's too hard. But even a person who annoys you, put it at work or something, put them there, right there in the front, eyeball to eyeball. And to the right in front of you, a stranger, a person whose face you know just enough to put them there. Have them there as we're talking, okay? So we're seeing immediately the difference. One is shiny and lovely, one is horrible, and one is boring, you know? Now, of course, the very first point, the biggest logical argument, what we're trying to do is this. This is the thing we're trying to remember. The purpose of this discussion, this analogy, this analysis we're doing here is that at the moment we see these 3 through the lenses of our needs. Those who satisfy my needs, friend. Those who consciously don't or actively don't, enemy. Those who do neither, stranger. We're trying to see how that is illogical. How there's not even just illogical, how there's no logical basis. So we're stepping out of the equation, what we're trying to do, and get to recognize that these 3 people, see them not through the lenses of your needs. They're nothing to do with you. They're 3 separate people out there. And we're trying to see them from their point of view. That's all, from their point of view, from their point of view. And we're trying to break down these concrete labels, you know. And we're trying to simply see that these 3 people are equal in their wish to be happy and not suffer. And that becomes the basis of developing love and compassion for all of them. Because now I only want my friends to be happy, so I can't get far. But if I know they all want to be happy equally to each other, then that becomes the basis. Now attachment is the basis of wanting people to be happy. Here we're shifting it to be the fact that they want to be happy. That's the reason. That's the logic. And we have to prove this because it's a scientific fact, but we just don't like it. So what are some of the things we've got to break down, the ridiculous nonsense that ego uses? Well, I think one little way to think is really logical. You check this. You've got these 3 people in front of you right now, okay? But shift the emphasis to become yourself. So when you look at your friend, you know that what they're seeing when they look at you, they're seeing a beloved. They're seeing a shiny, lovely person. They think you're gorgeous. They love your qualities. They want to make you happy. They like you. And you can see by looking at their face that when they look at you, they're smiling. Check this. So what they're seeing is you, but in this case, they're labeling you friend. You get that? Now, look at your enemy. Especially if it's your husband who you cheated on and you left him for a younger version, let's say. And he's looking at you, and look at him. I'm not saying he's your enemy. You are the enemy for him. Now you're putting yourself to be the friend in 1 minute. You're a friend. They are looking at you and seeing dazzle. You look gorgeous to them. Now your ex-husband looking at you, and he's looking at you daggers, and you know he's seeing a horrible person. He can't stand you. He is seeing an enemy. Hear my point. If your friend wrote a description of you and then you compared it with the description that your ex-husband wrote, you will see they're describing two completely different people. You know this. So for one, you are a beloved, you're gorgeous, you're sweet looking. For the other one, you're a horrible person. They remember the bad things that you did, and you did in fact do them. Just think. So they're seeing enemy. This is so clear. We know this. Now get the third person, the stranger, and you have done neither to them. They vaguely know you because they come on, you hop on the same bus as them occasionally, but you haven't touched their lives. So they look at you, and how do they feel? Completely bored. Nothing energizes. There's nothing, because you haven't touched their life. So they literally see a boring, distant stranger. Hear these points. You know this. You can tell by people how they look at you. Now, the simple piece to prove is this. It's so logical. The thing we're trying to prove is this. At 1 minute, you're somebody's friend. How do you feel when you have a headache? Oh, I can't stand my headache. You know it's not. It can't be a headache. You know that. Now, when your enemy's looking at you, how do you feel about your headache then? No different. I don't want a headache. I can't stand my headaches. And then when the person who sees you as a stranger is looking at you bored to tears, how do you feel about your headache? I can't stand a headache. So in other words, at 1 minute I'm a friend, next minute I'm an enemy, and next minute I'm a stranger. What's it got to do with me? They're just projections of 3 other people. It's got zero to do with me. I don't want to be happy. I don't want to suffer every second. Whoever's looking at me, I don't want to suffer. My headache doesn't feel different when an enemy looks at me and a friend looks at me. I want to be happy, only want to be happy every second. Whoever's looking at me, I couldn't care less. Hear the point. So friend, enemy, stranger, swap it around. They're all the same as each other. They all want to be happy and don't want to suffer. So we're trying to prove here, equanimity is so simple, and it's scientifically true. But our problem is this. As soon as we hear, when you say, let's have you an American and you didn't vote for Mr. Trump and you can't stand Mr. Trump, let's say. And then you hear, because he's in your enemy category, okay? Mr. Trump's in your enemy category, let's say. Excuse me. I'm sorry, I'm always snotting my nose and making rude sounds. I'm so sorry. I have to do it again. Wait. It's very dry in Santa Fe, I have to tell you. Most things about it are very nice.
Venerable, you are invited to switch Santa Fe to Zurich any moment.
Okay. I'm a big city girl anyway, so there you go. Okay, so it's sort of clear what we're trying to prove, but we're so addicted to these 3 labels, we don't question. But our problem is this: as soon as we hear, you've got you've got your beloved grandchild in the friend category, and you want them to be happy, your heart is bursting with love, affection. Of course you want them to be happy, and you will do whatever it takes to make them happy. This is just spontaneous, But now you look at Mr. Trump, let's say, and then you say to yourself, well, Mr. Trump wants to be happy. He's just the same as my grandchild. And the first instinct is, don't be ridiculous. Of course he's not the same as my grandchild, because what we're seeing is we're seeing the label we paint. We're seeing the picture we paint. So then you say, Mr. Trump wants to be happy. And then the first thing we will say, what do you mean he wants to be happy? He doesn't deserve to be happy. And that tells us exactly what we think. That tells us our love is contingent. You'd better behave exactly as my attachment wants. Then I'm prepared to want you to be happy. That's so heavy, but that's exactly what we're like. Why do you think relationships collapse? You fall in love, you think the person's a saint, you adore every inch of his body and everything about him, and you start to live with him, and then he farts and does all the wrong things. Then you get annoyed, you get upset, he stops doing what your attachment wants, he doesn't look at you so nice anymore, and eventually you chuck him out. Why? He hasn't changed. He's got no more grey hair, no more extra fat. He's always had the same qualities. It's just that you're idiot and didn't see them before because you were blinded by your own demented attachment that painted a fantasy picture of this person. Don't blame him. But now, because how dare he do what my attachment doesn't want? So forget about loving you, baby. You're out the door. That's how we are. What do you think the world suffers for? What do you think we have wars and divorces for? It's exactly this analogy, this analysis. It's very shocking. We should be embarrassed how self-centered we are, but that's exactly the point the Buddha's making. So the bottom line is, right now, I'm prepared to love, to want to be happy, only those who do what my attachment wants. And I've naturally will, and I'll have to struggle not to want Mr. Trump to suffer, you know, because he's not doing what my attachment wants. How dare he have different views? How dare he be a racist? How dare he be a white supremacist? And you might be right about it. He might be those things. That's not being argued with. No one says he is not doing that. That's not the issue here. We've got to get past all that and get to this primordial, fundamental point. And Buddha makes this point that every sentient being, from the hell realms to Buddhas, is driven, forget the Buddhas, they've done the job, is driven by the constant hunger to be happy and to not suffer. It's something so fundamental, and it's got zero to do with whether you deserve it, not deserve it, whether you're a monster, whether you're a pedophile, or whether you're a saint. That's not the issue here. So you've got to strip away all these misconceptions, strip away all these wrong views, these assumptions we have, you know, to get to this bare bones. So how do you apply this in daily life? I mean, it's an example, like your grandchild example is always a good one. Or your beloved little child, and they're playing next door with a smelly little ugly kid next door whom you can't stand, who picks his nose and is rude. And he might pick his nose and he might be rude. So your first instinct, because you're comparing him with your beloved angel, he's a horrible kid and you don't like him. So of course you have no wish for him to be happy whatsoever because he's a creep. So then you've got to stop and think, excuse me, there's my angel and there's a little mean guy next door. They are not different, Robina. They're from this one point of view, they are identical. Each second driven by the wish to be happy, the wish not to suffer. It's something so fundamental, and that's what equanimity is. Not some gooey feeling, oh, everyone's the same. No, it's quite specific, and that's the foundation upon which we can stably build love, compassion, great compassion, bodhichitta. You know. So ask me some questions about that.
Please unmute yourself, or you could type your question in chat and I will ask for you.
Any questions at all?
Yes, Basu has a question. Please
Good.
unmute yourself.
Talk to me, darling. Yeah. Where's Basu?
Basu, where are you?
Where are you?
He's not, he's unmuted.
Oh, there he is. He's still muted. But unmute yourself, Basu. There you go. Starting again. You just did it before and you stopped it. There you go. Now, talk.
Okay. So if you are in constant relation with somebody, for example, your boss, maybe.
Yes.
And to be very much practical in the sense, you can develop this compassion feelings, things like that.
No, Basu, you're leaping ahead. This is the point that I want to make. I've got to jump in front. What we're doing is describing precise steps, each of which will eventually lead to compassion. But compassion is about the 9th of the 11. We're at the very first one. We're establishing the very first one. We're not discussing you having compassion for your boss yet. That comes way much later. We're discussing the basis for you to begin to develop compassion. So the step we're discussing here is the very precise attitude of you looking at this boss who might be a creep, he might be a bad person, he might treat you badly. That's not the discussion here. It's this bare bones recognition that he is driven, like everyone else, by the wish to be happy and not suffer. That's the precise point.
Yes, absolutely. And I think he has an idea that at one time only one person can be happy. That is the survival for the fittest, eaten or be eaten or eat. So for example, either the predator or
Telling me
survival.
that your boss is like this. What you're saying is your boss is like that.
Yes. So what
Okay,
should
so good.
what
What's
should
the
one do?
question?
The question
what's
is that how to cultivate or constantly cultivate when somebody thinks to exploit you and you don't feel comfortable. For example, if you go on saying yes, 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 you can take it like that, okay, I have a compassion and things like this.
No, but who says you should continue? We've sort of had this conversation before, Basha. It was interesting. So who is suggesting you should keep saying yes? Who is suggesting that? Why are you suggesting that? Because you see, listen to me first, though, Bashu. We're talking the compassion wing here, which is for you to have the wisdom to know this man's mind so you can work with him skillfully. So this implies you've got to have developed some wisdom, which is the earlier stages of practice. When you work on your mind and your neediness and your attachment and your anger and your jealousy, and you become more stable, one, that makes you more clear and more content. But two, it informs your ability to interpret your boss and to know how wisely to navigate that relationship, to get not to be a fool, not to be a victim, not just to keep saying yes. No one's suggesting you should do that. And that that's not even meant by compassion. That's naive compassion. And that's not what's being suggested. So you need to get some wisdom yourself. And then given that you've chosen to be in this job, and you've got to realize that you have chosen to be in this job, you know this man, then the more wisdom you have, the more you can navigate that relationship. And then he will not be able to misuse you or hurt you.
Okay. Yeah.
That is dependent upon your wisdom. Can you see my point?
Yeah.
That's the job. And without wisdom, in other words, if you're so craving, most people, we're desperate to get a job. We're terrified of losing the job. So we end up sacrificing ourselves and becoming pathetic. But you've got to have some sense of good ethics, a sense of self-confidence, some clarity, and then you'll know how to work with this boss. And when you are clear in yourself, he cannot hurt you. And then if it becomes impossible, you leave the job with courage and confidence that you get another job. But if you can't get another job, then you accept who he is because you've got no choice. You must accept him, but you don't. But when you're clear and strong in yourself, he cannot hurt you. So the real discussion we're having here is the wisdom wing, your own work on your own mind. You see my point, Basu? Or not?
Yeah. So what you mean by this wisdom wing is to be more clever in interacting with him, so that
no, to be more clear about the wisdom wing work is what we've been discussing the last 6 weeks. You working on your own mind, you controlling your body, controlling your speech. Don't talk about your boss behind his back. Don't try to control your anger, your attachment, your fear, your worries, and then you'll be more stable in yourself and more confident, and then you'll be able to see him more clearly, not just through the lenses of your own fears, your own anger, your own attachment. You'll understand where he's coming from. You will be able to even have some compassion for him because you know he's harming himself. But when you've got more wisdom in yourself, you won't be able to be harmed by him, is what I'm saying. And then you'll be more wise in your relationship. When you're confident, I mean, if a person is a victim, bullies, like your boss, bullies and arrogant people, they are able to only harm people who are victims. But if you're not a victim anymore, he can't harm you, Basu. It's water off the tap.
You're very right.
That's wisdom wing I'm talking about. That's the work you do in your own mind every day, doing your own practice, seeing your own mind, seeing your own attachment to be seen as a good guy, wanting to be liked by everybody. We've all got that. When that gets less and you're more confident in yourself, he can't harm you. And you'll be more wise in your way of working with him.
Yeah, I actually chose the other version, which was really bad, and I suffered also. Was to be too rude. Like from where I come from, where you just say it once that don't do it, or I chuck your head out of your neck, and then he doesn't do it. So the other version, which just say that if you do it, then you face the consequences. Yes, you are unpolite, you are mean, you are selfish, but he doesn't harm you. The other one is the polite version. Please don't do it.
But either way, if you do it, yeah, okay, there's many things talking here, but also whatever method you use, if you are clear and strong, but you've also got to have some sense of empathy with him. And the only way you can have empathy with him, Basu, is by knowing your own mind. That's why the wisdom has got to come first.
Yeah, I completely agree. Yeah.
Good, I'm very pleased. Thank you so much. That's very helpful. What else, people?
Sarah, please unmute yourself.
Who is it? Who's talking?
Sarah.
Okay,
how are you? Hi.
Where are you?
I'm here.
Good,
Can
Sarah.
you
Talk
see
to
me?
Yes, I can
Okay,
see.
perfect. Do you have any tips for in the moment, flying off the handle from unmet expectations? So having expectations with a spouse or family member, and then they are not met. And I realize this, and I can most of the time stop myself and say, okay, this is okay. They're human. Everybody makes these mistakes, but it happens quite often. I just explode. It's like,
This is, well, we're talking, so Sarah, we're talking junior school here. We're not,
yeah,
we're at the moment we're in the university level compassion, but your question is junior school, and that's fine.
it's more,
Mostly, I beg your pardon?
sorry, it's more like almost having, the reason I'm applying it to this is because it's almost like having, I look at it as having compassion for them, that in that moment, like they deserve that patience. They deserve that.
That's all
that
getting, I mean,
patience
we're
from me.
talking, okay. We're getting all the kind of different levels of practice all mixed up, you know?
That's what I'm feeling. Okay.
I know that. So we're going back to the junior school. If you can't even
Okay.
control your speech yet, you got to keep working on junior school. The
Okay.
first level of junior school is just shut your mouth, Sarah.
Yeah.
So this shows us, it's rather humbling, isn't it? That we're not very,
It is.
we can talk about junior school, university levels. We've got to know them all, but it's so
Yes.
important when you, in these discussions, we've got to keep referring our questions back to this model of what level. In other words, if we're discussing university level music here, and then you have a question and we have to recognize it's junior school level, you've got to recognize that.
Yeah.
You've got to recognize you're talking a grade 1 level. It's nothing wrong with that. We're all at different levels. But you've got to know that if you can't even control your speech, that you haven't even begun to accomplish junior school.
Yeah.
And honey, join the club. Everybody's
Okay.
like that. So your first level of practice is shut your mouth.
Yeah.
Then when you're on your own, you do the high school bit, which is looking at your bottomless pit of attachment that's hungry to get what it wants. That's high school. Then
Okay.
you got the one of being with other people and even practicing the compassion wing, which is even more advanced. So one step at a time, Sarah.
Okay. Thank
say.
you.
You understand my point?
Yes. Thank
Good.
you.
Keep moving, baby.
Thank you.
What else, people? What else, darlings?
Monica's next. Please
Good,
unmute
Monica.
yourself.
Talk to me, sweetheart. Monica.
Hi, I'm sorry. You have said before that we need like, I'm sorry, I have my baby here.
Yes, darling.
We need to have compassion for the beings that do harm. And kind of my question was answered with the Basu's question, but I want to, I still don't get the part where we should like, because I'm sorry, let me restart again. You have said that when we can do something to change something in the exterior world, we can do it, right? But my question was more like when we see something that we like, for example, is harmful, for example, an abusive relationship, or I don't know, like a crime or something. We should.
I'm listening, darling.
Yeah. Okay, so we should do something because, like, for example, in my case, I'm a lawyer, and I mean, yeah, it's my job. But I have this conflict, like, should I do something? But I still get triggered with this feeling of, you know, like good, wrong, and I need to change what is wrong.
I'm a bit confused,
and
Monica. I'm a bit confused what you're saying, darling. I hear it roughly. I don't want to misunderstand you. Can you start again fresh and try and get it as one question? What is the question?
Yeah, like should I do just like watch? Can I go after someone else because my baby's crying? I'm sorry.
Okay, wait later. Okay, all right. Who else has a question?
Lars has a question. Lars, please go ahead.
Get your question clear, Monica. Once you've calmed your baby down, then get your question clear because I want to answer it. It's a good point. Go on. Who's talking now?
Yeah. Hello, Venerable.
Who is it? Lars, darling. Happy to see you, sweetheart.
Yeah, you too. I hope it's okay that I ask a question that goes back to last week's teachings.
Sure,
because we had it up in this discussion group this Tuesday at Laksam's discussion group.
Good.
The question was, how does Buddha define a feeling? how does Buddha define a feeling, and what 3 types of feelings are distinguished in the Buddhist psychology? Could you elaborate a little more about
Exactly. Well, first of all, the word feeling, and it's really important to understand this. It's not the way we would use it in our world. We would say, we use the word feeling to be synonymous with an emotion. I've got a lot of love. I'm feeling a lot of anger. We would call those feelings, wouldn't we? Do you understand? That's not the way the word is used here. It's much more fundamental. So like we've discussed, in the 3 categories of states of mind, and this is something that's quite a revelation when we get it, because it's not the way we talk in modern psychology or in neuroscience. Everything that goes on in our mind, there are millions of thoughts and feelings and thoughts and emotions, but we can divide them all into the categories. There are some that are deluded, neurotic, misconceptions, the cause of our suffering. There are some that are virtuous, valid, appropriate, and the cause of our happiness. Attachment, anger, and jealousy are examples of the first lot. Love, compassion, and kindness are examples of the second lot. So far, so good?
Yes.
Okay, the third lot, that's why I like to call them the mechanics of our mind. They're just bare bones parts of our mind that are neither virtuous in their character nor non-virtuous, but they're crucial parts of our mind without which you'd be like an insane person. So concentration is one of those. Good memory is one of those. To pay attention. The ability to discriminate second by second between this color, this thought, that word. Constantly, these are working in the mind, all doing their job behind everything else. You got me so far?
Yes.
Another in that category is called feeling, and it's either a pleasant feeling, an unpleasant feeling, or a neutral feeling. So these are completely different from the happy, the negative, or the positive ones. So in other words, there's a cake on the plate. It's a chocolate cake. And you've got the habit to enjoy chocolate cake. No, sorry, you've got the habit to be attached to chocolate cake. So 1, there's an object called cake. 2, there's an, oh, no, sorry. Let's just say your ex-girlfriend or something and you're angry with her. So 1, there's the object called ex-girlfriend. 2, because she hasn't done what your attachment wants, you have anger. So the second you see her, anger arises in your mind. So the cake is simply, the person's an object. Then you've got, what state of mind is that? That's in the first category. It's called anger. It's deluded. It's non-virtuous, and it causes you suffering. You get my point? Yes. Now, another object might be the cake. No, another person, your present girlfriend, and what arises in your mind is love. Well, that's a virtue. That's in the second category, and that's a good quality. That's an excellent state of mind, and they are just that. Now we have another state of mind in relation to each of them. The first one is anger, but the second one that's arising, or even the first part, is unhappy feeling. Now they're completely separate. Unhappy feeling has got nothing to do with anger. Anger is a delusion, but it comes along with a very unpleasant feeling. But we don't even see them as separate. We just assume that's normal. They come so quickly. So when you see your nice girlfriend, love arises, a delight, a thought, may I make her happy, which is a virtue. At the same time, the contact with that object triggers a very pleasant feeling. But we assume that pleasant feeling comes along with love, but they're separate states of mind, Lars. And this is the level of clarity that we have to develop as we really learn to be seriously a Buddhist. So pleasant feeling is another word for happiness. Literally, happiness. Now, our trouble is we think happiness is the girlfriend. We think unhappiness is the ex-girlfriend, but they're separate. Unhappiness, unpleasant feeling, and that can be the most mild unhappy feeling to the most intense, unbelievable agony. Do you understand?
Yes.
When you're brutalized by somebody. So feeling is this fundamental thing that functions in your sensory consciousness and your mental consciousness in response to different objects and different delusions or different virtues. So there's many things going on in our mind, and feeling is a fundamental thing. We've either got a pleasant feeling, which is happiness, an unpleasant feeling, which is suffering, and there can be a whole spectrum of those, or the third lot is a neutral feeling. But forget those for now. We're concerned mostly with the happy ones and the unhappy ones. So our problem is, we assume we all want happy feelings. We all want happy feelings. And that's the whole point about equanimity. Everybody wants happy feelings. Nobody wants unhappy feelings. This is what happiness and suffering mean. Nobody wants suffering, meaning suffering feelings. Nobody, or unpleasant feelings. That's really the best word for it. Suffering is another word for unpleasant feelings. But because we think the ex-girlfriend is the cause of the unhappy feelings, we even think she is the suffering. When you think of your happy feelings, you think of your delicious girlfriend. So we conflate those, and that's the big mistake we make. We've got to be far more accurate in first theoretically distinguishing these different states of mind and then eventually recognizing. So our trouble is because we all crave happy feelings. We all crave pleasant feelings. We all crave happiness, and then you assume the current girlfriend is the cause of it. So the millisecond you think of her, happy feeling comes. The millisecond you look at her, happy feeling comes. But we assume she's the cause of happy feelings. So attachment kicks in, exaggerates her deliciousness, and then all these three work together, and then that's samsara. So we've got to distinguish the attachment from love, from pleasant feelings. Three different categories of states of mind. And this demands first theoretical clarity and then slowly experiential. You with me?
Yes. So that would mean people could have treated me really badly today, and I'm having a really good day because I decide to make it a good day for me internally, but people treat me badly. So it's two separate pathways.
The pleasant feelings. So if you have made a decision to reinterpret the things that people are doing and not get hooked by them, that means you are having control over your ability to continue to have happy feelings in your mind.
Yes.
Yes. And you can, that's the point. That's why I use the examples of my friend in prison, like living in hell, accused of murdering 2 policemen, husband was executed, lost her children, living in isolation, living in hell, where you just assume she has no choice but to be utterly going out of her brain with misery. She said, I knew I had the choice. So she cultivated her mind to not be angry, not be resentful, not be jealous, not be depressed. I mean, that's massive hard work, which meant she was able to keep happy feelings as well as having love and compassion. That's what practice is, Lars.
Yes. Got it.
Well done. Now, there are other things that are more primordial that we almost seem we can't control, is the pleasant feelings through our sensory consciousness. So if there's, when that cake on that plate, because you've got the connection to, when you're familiar with chocolate cake, you've built up the habit of thinking about chocolate cake, you've got attachment to chocolate cake, which exaggerates the cake. So as soon as you see that shape and color, it triggers a very pleasant feeling. That is also a pleasant feeling, but then then attachment kicks in. So you see the shape and color. Pleasant feeling is arisen because you're familiar with it, and then attachment kicks in. So we've got to unpack that as well. The pleasant feeling is true because your familiarity with it. That's why the story about the little boy who was a fisherman, from his past lives, much familiarity with killing. Due to that, he's born in this life with a tendency to kill. He hadn't purified the habit to kill. It was a very strong habit. So the strength of our connection with a particular habit, in his case, killing, as soon as he met fishing, instantaneously it triggered a very, very pleasant feeling. And as soon as a pleasant feeling comes, we all want the pleasant feelings. So then attachment kicks in and makes the fishing look delicious. And the logic is, well, of course, fishing is good. It makes me feel good, so I'm going to do it again. That's the lie we have to unpack.
Of course.
It's so primordial, though, Lars. This happens millisecond by millisecond, and we've literally got a wrong analysis of the whole program, the whole process, and that's why that keeps us paralyzed in samsara.
Yes.
Okay, good. Thank you so much. So
Thank
important. Yes, people. Other questions? Talia or Monica, is your baby quiet now, darling?
No, I can talk now.
Good,
so I try to get more clear with my questions. So I have heard you have told us to change something in the external world if we are able to, but also I remember when you talk about, for example, this woman in jail, and also the nuns, for example, that were raped.
Exactly. That's right. Exactly.
Okay, so I get this feeling because I have always had this feeling, like when I see something that is injustice, like wrong, I want to go and do something.
Yes, good. That's compassion.
And
right. Good. So then.
Yeah, and then I think in these cases where you say that for example, these nuns felt, or this also friend of yours that was a monk, that was in the Tibetan, I don't remember exactly the persecution, and then you were like, okay, like, are you not going to do something? You know, like, because these people tried, like, or they decided to not doing, you know, like, no, because, you know, it's like we harmed them in the past.
Okay, so I hear your point clearly, Monica, but there's a couple of misconceptions in what you're saying in there. But that's okay.
Okay.
But that's okay. Well, we're going to come to now ask you the question. What is the question?
Okay.
What's the question?
Yeah, the question is, because I feel this confusion exactly, like, should I do something? You know, should I do something, or just should I stay?
Now I'm hearing your point, sweetheart. So with the monk example, he didn't know. The point was not what can he do to fix it. It was simply he didn't have anger. When I said to him, he'd been arrested, he'd been tortured, his family had been murdered, he left, he escaped Tibet, and then he was telling me about his suffering. He was in tears. And I said to him, this is like a long time ago, I said, do you ever get angry? And he laughed and said, angry? What for, Robina? It's our own fault. So what that's based on, and that's the first point about the nun. So the nun example is these two young Tibetan nuns who were tortured and sexually abused and tortured for a couple of years in prison in Tibet. They came back to, they came to the West. I'm just giving other people the context, Monica. So these two young women, you know, one Tibetan monk who'd been tortured, two young nuns who'd been tortured. So the nuns as well, they were giving this talk at an event that Richard Gere organized back in 2003 in New York, and I was invited when I was running the prison project, and about 20 former prisoners had all been invited, all of whom are Americans, all of whom had done some kind of meditation in prison. So people were talking about their suffering and their dramas and their anger and their fears, and then these young women were invited to talk about their experiences in prison, being tortured and sexually abused. So what was very clear, this is the first point, Monica, what was very clear, and this is again the levels of practice, for those nuns, that everybody could watch, they weren't angry. They were sad, tears were coming, but they were not angry. Same with my friend Jigdrol, he was not angry. But before we go further, Monica, I still want to discuss this piece and I'll get to your point. So this is completely based upon the teachings on karma. This is junior school. This is the first level of practice in Buddhism, that every living being comes into this life programmed with their own past tendencies, programmed with their own past actions, and such that whatever happens to us, whether it's happy or suffering, is the fruit of our past actions. So when you've got the view of karma down very clearly, this is the first approach, both with Jigdrol, the monk, and the two nuns, because karma for them is such a massively integrated view in their being, not just some vague belief. It's like the view for them that they've come into this world and that everything that happens to them is the fruit of their past actions, and that includes their happiness as well, not just their suffering. So as a result of that, they don't have anger. Why not? What's anger? Anger is saying, how dare this happen to me? Or for you, Monica, when you look on the world and you're a lawyer and you see suffering out there, the first thing we say is, that is bad. Why is that happening to those poor people? And that we usually come from anger. Anger is the view that no one knows why bad things happen. Anger is the natural response when you don't have the view of karma, or, you know, I mean, that's really obvious. So neither of these young nuns or this one monk had anger because they have the view of karma. They don't have the question, why is this happening to me? They don't have the question when they see injustice out there, why is this happening to my friends? Because they have the view of karma. This is a stupendously powerful view that really takes time. So that's why they didn't have anger, first. Second, now, Jigdrol was out there demonstrating. That's how come he got arrested. This is all the result of 1987, the first mini uprising in Tibet, and all the young revolutionaries were young monks and nuns. So this is also the point, Monica. They have the view of karma. They know why this is all happening from past karmic connection from 1,000 lifetimes ago with the Chinese communists. They've got a reason why, Monica, but that doesn't stop them from acting. They know, because why? Because it's simply wrong that the Chinese communists are taking over Tibet. They know the reason it's happening. because they must have done it to the Chinese 1,000 lives ago. But that doesn't mean they sit there paralyzed and just, oh, well, it's all karma, you come and harm me, please. That's a big misconception, Monica. It actually, because they knew why it happened, but that doesn't mean they didn't go out there and become revolutionaries and demonstrate. And that's when the Chinese communists slammed down on them. And then he got tortured. Then he escaped. And that's when he ran away. So he knows why it's happening, but they also know that they can do something to change it. There's no contradiction at all. So from that perspective, Monica, when you see injustice out there, if you're a lawyer, of course you can do every second if you see suffering out there. Every second, if you've got the view of karma, you know why it's happening, but that doesn't mean you don't do anything. That's nihilism. Of course you want to do something to change it, but for everybody's sake. And this is the point about the young nuns. What they said was, they were explaining their suffering. They were not angry. And then they said, and one of them said at the end, and of course, this is an extra level, Monica. This is the compassion side now. One of them said, of course, we had compassion for our torturers because we know we must have harmed them in the past. So the karmic one is what informs their own ability to deal with their suffering and not go crazy and lose their mind out of anger, because they know there's no benefit in being angry, because anger says, why is this happening to me? They don't ask that question. They don't have anger. It's not because they're suffocating it, because anger is this frustration and how dare this happen? I don't deserve it. But when you have the view of karma, you don't have the view of I don't deserve it. This is very powerful for us in our culture. It's very powerful. But not only that, this whole first level of practice, karma and the mind, understanding all these things, is the basis of real compassion. And those young nuns showed that. So she said, of course, we had compassion for our torturers. One, because we know we harmed them in the past, but because two, we know that they will suffer terribly in the future because of what they did. So that encompasses the whole Buddhist path. So are we clear, Monica?
Yes, I'm clear now. Thank you. Thank you,
I'm very happy. Thank you so much for your question. Thank you, sweetheart.
Thank you.
So do what you can, Monica. And that's the point. That's what Gradual did. They all went out, and these young monks and nuns demonstrated, prepared to lose their lives because they know the cause, but they also know that it's important to change it because it's simply wrong. But whereas we tend to think, well, if you know the cause and you're the blame, why not just sit down there and accept it? That's nihilism. That's bizarre. But it takes us time to think about these things. It takes us time to see the logic of that. So if you can get out there and understand why people are suffering, if you have the view of karma, Monica, you know the people being harmed at the moment who are innocent victims this life have done this in the past, but you will still want to change it because it's valid. It's valid to want to help suffering people, but you do it for the sake of everybody, not just for the victims. Do you understand, darling?
Yeah, exactly. Yes, this is perfect. Thank you very much.
In other words, if you have two children and you love them both, but one kid is being a bully and the other kid is being the victim, you help them both because you don't want the bully to create negative karma and you want to save the victim from being you love both of them. So you give them you hug the victim, but you're stern with the bully. But the reason is for love for both of them. Do you see my point here?
Yes, exactly. It's like this equitative, like it's egalitarian, like it's
that's right,
not
darling,
like
exactly. But this is the compassion wing. The level we're talking about now, next week, is much more advanced because it means you see everybody's in the same boat. Everybody doesn't want to suffer. Everybody wants to happy. Everybody's created their own past causes. Nobody knows why they're suffering. Everybody runs around blaming everybody else, all going crazy. So when you have this bigger picture of karma, that informs you, and then it informs your ability to have compassion to help others. It's fundamental. It's so necessary.
yes. Okay. Yeah. Now I understand.
I'm so
Thank
happy.
you very much.
Thank you, sweetheart. What else, people? More questions? We'll continue.
Hi, Venerable Robina. I will ask a question anonymously.
Yes.
It is our duty to take care of our mothers. My mother of this life is controlled by its maras and hurts others and rejoices in hurting. She's moving away.
What happens? What?
Okay, the mother
hurts others. She's angry. It sounds like angry and unhappy. Join the universe. Then.
Yes. So the mother is angry and unhappy and likes hurting others and rejoices.
Well, like hurting others. That's okay. Don't worry. She's just called angry. We understand that. Then.
Okay.
Question.
She's moving away from me as I cannot help if she's moving away, and I can help her when I try it.
I don't understand.
Okay, yes, I'm reading the question. It's not first
Okay,
language.
so try and read it and get it together, and then ask me.
Okay, so she's moving away, and I can help her if when I try, but she tries to hurt me. What should I do?
Well, this is, I mean, first level, like I said to Susan, junior school, entry level, grade 1, control your speech and control your body if you can. Don't badmouth her. Don't not talk about her behind her back. You know, try and control yourself when you're with her, if you can, your behavior. Second, now the next level of practice, look into your mind and see that, you know, her anger is her problem, but it's not your problem. Her anger and her being a bully and her harming is her problem. And if we're brave enough at the second level of practice, you start to see your attachment and your own anger, your own fears and your own jealousy and your own worries and fears. That's your job. So the more you're aware of that, then you can understand. And then eventually compassion wing, on the basis of you understanding yourself and working on your body, working on your speech, working on your mind, you'll then understand her. So then as for helping her and not helping her, you do your best, sweetheart. You just have to do your best, you know. But when you say moving away, I say moving away emotionally or moving away physically? I don't understand quite.
It wasn't clear in the question, but I'm guessing it's physically.
But darling, you do what you can. I mean, this is the world are full of angry people. Well, and of course, because she's your mother, there's a very close karmic connection. So it's much worse for you than it would be for the next door neighbor, you know, because you've got this connection. And again, the first point of the wisdom wing, sweethearts, is we've got to see why we suffer. You're not suffering. According to the analysis of the wisdom wing, you are not suffering because your mother's mean to you. You're suffering because your attachment's not getting what it wants. You're suffering because of your own fears, your own aversion, your own jealousy, your own hurt. Join the universe, darling. This is a hard one. That's why we suffer. So all you can do, given that where you're at in your progress, you only can do as much as you can and not do more. And if you can't handle it, well, honey, leave your mother alone. Don't go near her. If you don't know how to handle a crazy dog, the dog's crazy, the dog will bite you, but if you don't know how to handle the dog, you have to keep distant. So if you haven't worked enough on your own mind, and that's everybody, sweetheart, that's everybody. We get so hurt by people because we're very fragile. So you have to know where you're at. You have to know what you can handle. So if you can't handle your mother, you leave her alone. That's it. You got to know what you're capable of, sweetheart. You got to know what you're capable of, and you do according to that. That's it. That's the best answer I can give. And yes, have compassion for your mummy, because guess who she's harming? Herself, as well as everybody else. But if you can handle it, if you are more wise and more skillful and you've learned how to deal with crazy dogs, then you help your darling mother. But you've got to know where you are at. You've got to know your capability. This is a really important point, sweetheart. I hope that helps.
It's clear, Venerable Robina.
Okay.
Good. Okay. But no, there's one more question. She says that she believes I'm creating bad karma because I let her alone.
Well, you've got to decide. You can't have it both ways. You've got to decide, sweetheart. It's like saying, I can't help the crazy dog because I'm not capable. And then you feel guilty because I'm not helping the crazy dog. You've got to decide what you can do, sweetheart, and make choices, and you're in charge. You decide what you're capable of. But you know, also you could try to help that crazy dog until it kills you. So your job is to try to help a crazy dog. Your job is to try to help your poor darling mother. But that doesn't mean she'll allow you to help her. She's got to be able to be helped by you. So you don't feel guilty if you can't help your mum. That's your mum's problem. You've got to be clear, sweetheart. You've got to know where you are at. You've got to know what capability you have got, and then you make a decision on that basis. And just because your mother can't be helped by you, maybe has got nothing to do with you. You're doing your best. That's your mother's inability to be helped by you. So you can't take responsibility for your mother. That's foolish. So you've got to be clear, sweetheart. Not easy. I know that.
You say you've been very clear. Great, thank you. The next one is coming from Basu. Could you please unmute yourself?
Yeah, thank you.
Basu,
Yeah.
Yes.
You just told us about the incidents of the nun, and my question is related again to that. So what I understood from it is that, we must have done something, the nun must have done something in the past karmic life, and that's why he is facing these problems. She is also compassionate to these Chinese people, the torturers, that they will suffer for their actions. But my only question is, later she also escaped, but For example, they did something bad to them today, and the next day, my question is, should the nuns should be compassionate to them first, or to the torturers in the preference level, whom they should be first compassionate?
But that's what practice is, Basu. Junior school and high school level, the very first level of practice is you control your body and speech, and you abide by the laws of karma, and you realize that everything you think and do and say will produce your future. So when you understand karma at the first level of practice, you're stopping killing, you're refraining yourself from lying, stealing, harming. Why are you living good ethics? This is junior school level, because you know that everything you do will ripen in the future, and because you know you don't want future suffering. Now that's compassion for yourself, Basu. That's compassion for yourself.
Yeah,
in other words, why, just a minute, why you decide not to eat the wrong food is because you do not want to suffer in the future. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, that's compassion for yourself. In Buddhism, they don't call it that, but abiding by the laws of karma and deciding to live a good ethical life, the reason behind that is because you are sick of suffering. You don't want to create more future suffering. That you might as well say that is compassion for yourself. Once you understand that, now you have the space to have compassion, because you see that they are harming themselves.
Yeah, I think
you can't have that level, but you can't have that level of compassion first, Basu. You've got to first have it for yourself, which is abiding by the laws of karma, because you're sick of suffering. It's a logical progression.
Yeah, I think that you are absolutely right, because people take it just the opposite way. They cannot see that if you are compassionate to the torturers, they feel that maybe the torturers torture more. So it's better not to be compassionate to them, but
because of that statement you just made has got so many inbuilt false assumptions. That's why we have to unpack it very carefully and understand the logic behind these thinking, not just take it superficially, because that's the usual view we have in the world, because we don't have the view of karma. We believe that evil people are evil, and so we have to harm them because we don't have a view of karma. So when we understand karma at the very beginning, it informs all the next stages of our practice. It all kind of fits, you know. So that's why we've got to think of this stuff so carefully, think it through logically. Thanks, Basu. What else, people?
There's no more question in the chat.
Okay, so here we've got these 11, these techniques, a series of 11 techniques, okay? So I'll go through them roughly. And each of these is again, it's like a ladder. It's got 11 steps on it. And the 11th step is bodhichitta. So each step will naturally lead to the next. And each of these steps, again, is very precise. They're all very precise. Psychologically, they fit each step from the very beginning of the path, junior school to high school, all leads each incrementally to the next. And this is what takes time for us to see. So here we're describing these 11 steps that culminate in the accomplishment of bodhicitta, you know. So there's many different techniques you can use, and there, you know, you can have 27 steps, you can have whatever you like, but this is a particular series of practices that consist of these 11 different steps, 11 different meditations. And I mean, people could go into 10 years of retreat to go through these 11, to do them experientially, you know. So the very first step is to have this sense, this foundation one of this recognition that all beings want to be happy and don't want to suffer. They're the same as each other. Friend, enemy, stranger are the same as each other in their wish not to suffer. They're the same in their wish not to suffer. They're the same as each other in their wish to be happy. This becomes our basis. Now we're moving gradually towards developing love, compassion, great compassion, bodhicitta, but there's a series of steps in between. So the next little step, which sounds hilarious to us, it goes like this. All sentient beings have been our mother. So almost you need your calculator for this one. It's kind of setting ourselves up into this vast view that there are trillions of sentient beings. We've all had trillions of lifetimes. And of course, these are incredibly abstract for us. This is not a philosophy that we are all familiar with, unless we're brought up with it as a Buddhist, you know. And it never even occurs to us. It doesn't appear to us. It's not in our science. It's certainly not in our Christian teachings. It's not in our Muslim teachings. It's a very abstract concept initially. So this next step is we're trying to get our minds clear that if there are trillions of sentient beings, we all had trillions of lifetimes. It's logical we've all bumped into each other trillions of times. But the particular example here we're using is the idea of the mother. They've all been my mother. So just as a concept. So then, and that's logical if you take this view of beginningless lifetimes and endless numbers of sentient beings. But I remember asking a mathematician about this. He thought it was a load of rubbish. So I don't know what his logic was, but never mind. So anyway, the very next point is now you think, using this example of the mother, because, you know, this is coming from India, and obviously, you know, the Asian tradition, in all our traditions, but we're so deluded these days, we think mothers are horrible. And many of our mummies are horrible, I agree with you. But nevertheless, the point here is the idea of mother here, the idea of mother is simply an example of a person who's given birth to us, nurtured us, taken care of us, loved us, and supported us. So that's already quite shocking for us, because, I mean, just heard the recent example of a neurotic mummy who likes to harm people, and this is really common. So it's a shocking one to hear for us. Well, one time the Dalai Lama, because Western people always ask him about this, why should I use my mother as an example? She's been horrible to me. He said, well, don't use mother, use anybody who's nurtured you, anybody you can think of as an example. It's just an example of a person who's been very close to you, who's given birth to you, nourished you, taken care of you, loved you, taken blah, 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 you know. So if you can use that example, but it's a good example. Because in the next little meditation, this is even more shocking now, but listen to it. It's a good one for us. It's a great exercise. The next one, number 4 says, the mother is kind. So I think this is a brilliant, might be very intense for the person who just asked before about the mean mother. So honey, just listen to it. And if you can't take it, leave it there. You can't force yourself. So the logic of this one is this, and I think it's an excellent example, even if our mother has been mean. Because this is the point again, you see, if we've been through the stages of practice up to now, we know we're all been in the same boat. We know that due to past karma, I've done certain actions. We know in the second scope, I've looked into my mind, I've got attachment, I've got anger, I've got jealousy. In the second level of practice, we've seen how that causes me so much suffering. But we recognize we've all got all these states of mind. Now we get to the compassion wing, and we realize everybody's in the same boat. Everybody's got attachment. Everybody got anger. Everybody has love, everyone to some degree. So we're already stable with this view that we're all in the same boat. If you haven't done the earlier work, then you're not stable, and this is too advanced for you. So you don't do it. It's very clear. But this is the logic of the mother. The mother's kind. What does that mean? Literally, logically. Let's look at it. The first point is this, I would say. When we say someone is kind, there's 2 things I'd suggest. First one is, we can see in the world there are some people, and you just look at them and you say, oh, she's such a kind old lady. Even their voice is kind, their aspect, the way their behavior is genuinely kind. We can see this. There are some people who look like this. That's fair enough, but that's not quite the point here. The deeper point is this. And I think this is, again, we should be embarrassed by this. When a person does something for me, I'll say to them, oh, you are so kind. Now, you know, you could be I'll use an example. I'm in the cafe. I order my chocolate cake and the waitress smiles at me. She gives me a piece with extra cream on it and gives me a discount. I will naturally say, oh, you are so kind. Why? Because she just gave me what my attachment wants. She might think I'm a look at this fat, old, ugly Australian Buddhist nun out there, and she cracks jokes about me to the cook. But she does, so she couldn't care less about me. But because she gave me what my attachment wants, I'm so excited, I'm prepared to say you are kind. So we are basically what we think a kind person is a person who does what my attachment wants. Now, that's exactly why we think our mother is not kind, because she doesn't do what my attachment wants. Mothers do abuse. They do terrible things to some mothers are human beings, and they have children, and they do terrible things to them. That's a fact. No one can argue with that. So how in the name of God am I supposed to think in this little meditation, number 4, that my mother's kind? Or number 3. What does it mean she's kind? What are you talking about? Well, let's analyze why. There's logic to this, but let's look at it. And this is shocking for us. And if you can't do this, the person who asked this question, don't freak out about this, but if you can be brave enough to think about this, see if you can see some truth in it, sweetheart. I mean, everybody's mother does mean things at some point. Some mothers are more mean than others because they're really suffering. That's why your mummy's angry, because she's completely out of her brain, you know, with misery. That's why. So the point is this. Now, use yourself as an example. Every one of us knows there are some people who don't like us. It could be our sister. It could be, you know, our ex-boyfriend. And you know, when they look at you, like I said before, they're seeing a horrible person. You know they can't stand you. And you know how unbelievably painful it is, because you know that person is using the bad things you did do, and they're painting you with that brush. So you might have done 27 bad things, but they take, you know, they're taking those bad things you did and they're painting the whole of you with the brush of ugly. And you know it is not true. You know you've done many kind things for that ex-boyfriend, but because yes, you did cheat on him and yes, you did leave him, but that does not counteract every single good thing that you did do for him. This is a fact. But when we're angry, we can't see any good things. Now, I know for you who asked about your mummy, if you're brave enough, you can, and this is the powerful exercise we need to do. The fact is, I mean, I know some people, for example, I know there's one particular prisoner, I remember some prisoner who just didn't himself have much anger, and he wrote little stories, and he wrote about his crazy mummy. His mummy was a junkie. His mummy was an alcoholic. His mummy was a maniac. She left him alone. She you know, her boyfriends would abuse the son. But this little boy, you could tell from how he wrote, because he didn't have much anger. His mother was a disaster, but he wasn't angry with her. He loved his mother. He wanted to help his poor suffering mother. So because he didn't have anger, he could see his mother in a more broad way. She did terrible things to him, but he forgave her because he loved her. So that meant he didn't have much anger. So even though his attachment didn't get what it wanted, she would abuse him. She'd leave him alone. She would allow her boyfriends to harm him, but he always loved his mother because he could see that she suffered. Now that's profound. Now, my mother, at some point, first of all, I adored my mother. I was in love with my mother. In the beginning, when you're a little girl, you're in love with your mother, which means attachment is running crazy. But then as I got older, and this is what happens, I started to find fault in my mother. I remember the first moment I found fault, I was so shocked. She fell off the pedestal. And then from there on, I continued to find fault. And before you know it, by the time I'm 13, I hated my mother. All I could see was the bad things. That's what we all do because we have attachment and aversion. So we swing from she's a saint to evil. Or maybe we think she's evil from the very beginning. That's because of anger. And why do you have anger? Because your attachment didn't get what it wanted. So the job we have to do is step out of the equation like we do with equanimity and start going through your mother since you were a little girl. What are some of the good things she did? Well, your mother gave birth to you. Millions of mothers have abortions. I'm not criticizing, I did. But your mother didn't abort you. This should be enough reason to weep with compassion for your mother and gratitude that she didn't abort you. That's one thing your mother did. Your mother must have fed you. She must have tied your shoelaces. She probably showed you how to wipe your little bottom when you went to the toilet. You start writing a list and you're going to have hundreds of things that your mother did that were kind to you, but we forget because we are outraged. How dare my mother do one bad thing to me? Because our attachment is not getting what it wants. So we only remember the bad things. And like I said, put yourself into that position. But that's what we all do to each other. We have two extreme descriptions. When we've got anger, we only remember the bad things. When we've got attachment, we only see the good things. We are all like this. So I think this is a profound exercise, especially when you can remember your mother's bad qualities. And she was horrible. Your mummy might be mean to you, but that's because she's suffering. And if you go back in high school and know about your own attachment and your own anger, you know why you are suffering. This informs your ability to now know why your mother's suffering. So this is a powerful exercise to do. Start painting a new picture of your mother. Yes, she did bad things. And then if you have the view of karma, you know why she's doing bad things to you. This is why the junior school and high school level of practice are absolutely fundamentally necessary to properly do this compassion wing. This compassion level is impossible. It's like, how can you go to university without junior school and high school? But this is why, because emotionally, we don't think of it like this. It's very hard for us. So the third point, your mother is kind. Start seeing the good things. And before you know it, you're going to paint a good picture of your mother and you'll know she did bad things. Yep, but that's, so then conclusion. First of all, beings have been your mother and your mother's kind. Logic is all beings are kind to you. This is the next one. This is even more shocking. And we'll, go into that later because I'm running out of voice. I'm sorry. I always seem to run out of voice lately. So it's just really analyzing our mind, looking into our mind, analyzing our attachment, analyzing our anger, analyzing our viewpoints. This is really intense, hard work, you know, and if we're not ready for it, don't. This is heavy duty stuff, people, psychologically. So take it according to our pace, one step at a baby time, one step at a time, one step at a time, you know, don't just gloss over all this. It's pretty intense psychology. I think we should leave it there, people. All right. Enough food for thought.
Yes.
All right, sweethearts. Is that okay?
Yes, Venerable. If we could use a few minutes to recite the long life prayer for you, we would be very grateful.
I don't think it's beneficial, darling. Just have the thought. I understand, Nina. Just we dedicate, we think, let's do it in our own words. We dedicate, we think all these thoughts we've had, all these seeds we've planted, may we nourish these seeds one step at a time so we can develop our marvelous potential so we can be a benefit to others like we've talked, and make compassion grow and grow in the hearts of all our teachers. And, you know, thank you so kind, Nina, because I've been a bit sick and everything. So Nina's being very compassionate thinking that way. So just think it in your hearts. I'll do my best to bully death and not die, okay? Not that I have much choice, but never mind, you never know. And then may all our teachers live long. May we live long. All of us need to live long, Nina. Every one of us must live long, please, because the world needs people practicing virtue, even a little bit. So, okay, will that do, Nina? Thank you, precious one.
Absolutely.
Jang chob sem chogren poche ma ke panam ke guchi ke panyam pa me pa yang gong ne gong du pa shog. May compassion, bodhichitta grow and grow and grow and grow, and never give up, darling people. Never give up. Never give up. Never give up. And I thank you all so much. Much, much love. Okay. Thank you, Nina. Thank you, Talia. Thank you, Bashu. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Monica. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Sarah. Everybody for your questions.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you for our prayers.
Please get well.